maybe not be putting yourself so like on that outer circle,
Yeah.
and maybe putting them more in the on the outer circle. Because it's still a car. You're still selling them a phone or a
Yeah.
car, or whatever it is. The objective's the same. It's just who we're going to talk about. So
Yeah. Yeah. No, exactly.
anyway, I don't know
Yeah.
if it relates or doesn't relate, but
Yeah.
that's what I thought about.
No, yeah, 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 and I'm a big Apple fan. I think I've owned every product that Apple has ever put out in one form or another. So, but yeah, I mean, they became known. I mean, they're also interesting from a design standpoint because they're also the ones that pioneered the idea of like unboxing something should be an experience, and that came out of an audience analysis of saying like our consumers are the ones that this is more than just a computer to them. This is like a lifestyle. So they put a lot of effort into like when the box opens, it unfolds in a very pleasing way. And like the last iMac we got my wife, the box was like a piece of origami. Like it unfolded and pieces flipped out and all this stuff. So and that comes out of audience analysis. They knew who they wanted to grab. They knew what kind of experience those people wanted to have, and that's what they designed for. So,
And you
and
find yourself not wanting to throw those packaging
yeah,
materials away because it has value in some way.
yeah,
Even
exactly.
though it's
Yep.
just paper. But I didn't know that. That's a really interesting point. Thanks.
Yeah, yeah, and now everyone else is copying that, like that whole like thing. So, all right, so yeah, let's turn shift gears here a little bit then to the goal setting, which for this first phase of instructional design, this is the end zone, the end line, the goal line for all of this. So we've done all of this analysis work. We've really worked to understand our students. We've really worked to understand what's the instructional problem that I'm trying to solve, whether it's an innovation thing where it's something new that the students haven't worked on before, or whether it's an issue that we've identified in their current learning. We've learned about the community, the environment, that the context that the learning is going to happen in. So what we now need to do is take all of that and turn it into student outcomes, learning outcomes, goals, where we can then say, if a student reaches this goal, then that will have helped to solve the problem that we were trying to solve. And knowing who the students are will help us know how to get that to that goal and so on. So where this leads us to is the whole issue of goal setting. And I know there's a lot of different goal setting frameworks out there, ways to think about setting goals. A lot of them have, fun names and acronyms and all of that. Um, Normally, I'm the kind of person who says, well, if you find an approach that works for you, then go with that approach. A lot of them are similar enough that you're going to get to the end result the same. SMART goals are one place where I do kind of more strongly suggest or ask that like this is a model that is worth following. And a lot of that comes from my own experience. I don't know how many years ago it was that I became familiar with the SMART goal model, but I use it in so many different contexts now and have found in pretty much every case that it is effective. It's the way that it's structured makes it easy to get to a goal that is going to be useful. I use it myself for a lot of things. I teach it to all of my students. My rock band students, every day when they come in, they are the ones that determine what that rehearsal is going to be about that day. And the way they do that is by setting a couple of SMART goals. So it's a framework that's I think easy to grasp, um, but then also in the end, I think delivers really high quality goals. And from looking through the forum from last week, a lot of you in your own districts, in your own backgrounds, this is a framework that's been used too. I know a lot of schools explicitly say, for your student learning goals for the year, you've got to frame them as SMART goals. Or if you're doing your professional learning goals, they have to be framed as SMART goals. So I know that it's a framework that a lot of districts have adopted and said this is what you're going to use. So in this case, it's good to know it. I did see a couple people in the forum who have had experience with it and were not so keen on on the experience that they had or on sort of the way that it's structured. But hopefully, maybe by digging into it a little bit more, using it in maybe a slightly different way, it can still be useful and still be something that you'll want to use. So there is a link in Blackboard to a web page that kind of goes into these in a little more detail. There's a lot of information out there on the web about SMART goals, but just kind of to recap, or for those of you that have not worked with them as much, just to kind of go through the 5 letters and what they mean. The S is specific, and what this means is that this is kind of what sets these goals apart from other goals. Like, it can be a great goal to say, I want to be healthier. Like, that is a goal. No, there's no denying that that is a goal. Um, but it's not a SMART goal. And just saying I'm going to be healthier is not necessarily going to be an effective tool to help you get to being healthier. We need to be more specific. We need to know sort of exactly what is the thing that we need to do to be healthier, or what is the behavior I'm trying to change. So this is about detail. It would be better to break down a larger goal into a bunch of smaller SMART goals than to try to have some big umbrella goal that's a little on the vague side. So, I'm always telling my students, it's not, we're going to work on this, but it's like, we will be able to play this part of this song, that kind of level of specificity. The M is measurable. And as teachers, this is kind of what we're expected to do. When we're setting our yearly goals and our SLOs and all that, that's all about show me the proof that the students that made it to the goal that you set for them. So if you set a goal that has no means of measuring it, you're going to be awfully hard pressed to know if you actually reach the goal or not. So this is where you have to be a little careful about the the verbs that you're using. Like, understand is one that comes up a lot. The students will be able to understand blah blah blah. That sounds like a good thing to do, but trying to measure understanding can get a little tricky sometimes. So you might have to think differently about, like, what is the thing that you can measure. Again, in my context with my students, obviously they're trying to improve on their ability to play through a piece of music. So they can't just say, we're going to play the song better, because what's the measurement of that? So they might need to say, we will be able to play through the song without stopping, or we will be able to play through the song with only, with 3 or fewer mistakes, or something that an outside person could come in, could watch whatever the thing is that's the accessible activity, and come to a conclusion on without needing to interpret it in some way. So you do need to think about that. So how are you going to measure this? And if the thing you're trying to aim for can't be measured, then you're going to need to adjust what you're aiming for so that it can be something that you can show. Again, there are lots of goals out there that are still goals that are not measurable, and that's fine. But in an educational context, measurement is kind of important. They're expecting that of us. Achievable, and this is where, again, having your audience analysis in place is important, because you want to make sure that the goal is pushing the students to a new level, but you need to make sure that it's not going too far beyond what they can do. If a student comes in to me and they've just learned to play guitar, they're not going to set a goal of being able to play all of Eddie Van Halen's solos, because that's just, from a practical standpoint, not achievable, at least not within the time frame we have. So you want to push the learners, but you also want to make sure that it's something that they will be able to get to. So knowing your audience is key here, knowing what they know already, knowing what skills they have already, knowing what they've been exposed to prior to your class, or prior to this unit, or prior to this lesson, so that you can reach that, find that balance between, you know, too hard and not hard enough. So looking for that achievable. The R of all of these, if you look online and you look up information about SMART goals, there are two uses for the R. One of them says relevant and the other says results oriented. Myself, I tend towards the results oriented because relevant to me um, kind of ties into the achievable. Like it's something that actually applies to what the students are doing, but I guess they're both important. So you can think of it either way or use both if you want. So if you're going the relevant route, and again, this is where from the discussion we were just having, knowing some of the cultural contexts, the social contexts, you want to make sure that whatever this goal is going to be something that is meaningful for your students in some way. You might have to help them understand why it's meaningful, but you want to make sure that they can relate to why is it important for me to try to get to this goal. Otherwise, they're not going to be motivated. They're not going to want to try. If you're going for the results oriented side, that's just a way to make sure that you're focusing on the outcome and not on the steps that you're going to take to get to the outcome. So again, to go back, and I keep going back to my rock ensemble because they do use this all the time, but rather than saying we are going to work on this today, that's an activity. What they need to say is, at the end of the class, we will be able to do this thing. And then the working on it is what they do to get there. But I generally, at the beginning of the year, especially when I'm just teaching this to my students, I will get a lot of goals back that are something that are more about the activities that they're going to do to get to the goal, not about what the end result is. So you want to try to frame the goals from the perspective of the target at the end of it. And then the final one is time bound. And I got this description from some resource, and I liked the way that they said it. You want to have a time frame so that it adds a sense of urgency to the work. This is another motivational piece, along with the relevance. Is if they know that there's no deadline for when they've got to have something learned, there will be some students that will obviously self-motivate and they'll still engage with it, but there are other students who will say, oh, okay, I don't need to do that until June 5th. They'll wait until June 4th to like work on it. So you use the time bound to give them that, okay, you've got a deadline, this is where you've got to try to get to by this point, and that helps increase the motivation to try to get to the goal. So that's just the overview of the 5 letters SMART. And again, there's a link on the Blackboard if you want to look into it more. You can look up other information. But here we go again from my rock ensemble class. So a bad SMART goal would be something like, we are going to work on Carry On Wayward Son. All right. That's an activity. It's not really measurable. There's no timeline to it. Maybe it's achievable. I don't know, but it kind of loses. It's not specific. So a better one might be something like, by the end of rehearsal. So there's your time frame. Our student rock band will be able to play through. So that kind of includes the relevance because they are a student rock band and they are there to play music. So that kind of ties into that. The introduction and the first verse of Carry On Wayward Son. So there's your specificness without needing to stop. And there's your measurable. And that's also the being focused on the result, because the result is them playing it at the end. It's not saying how they're going to get there, but it's saying at the end. And then, the only piece that's not explicitly in there would probably be the achievable, but that would come from whoever is setting this goal kind of understanding that this is something that we are able to do in this period. And that would mean they understand their own abilities. They know the abilities of the other students in the class. They know what they've worked on already. They know how much work is left to be done. So that last piece, the achievable, is kind of implied in the wording of this, that you kind of assume that that whoever wrote this goal knows that this is something that they could potentially achieve. So that's kind of all of that put together. All right. So for your instructional design projects, um, this basically outlines the 4 sections of this first phase. So you're going to start by identifying the problem you're trying to address, whether it's something new or it's something that is existing but is not working the way it should. And if you've got some data to back that up, or whatever specifics you have, then you've got the either the audience analysis or the context analysis, or you could even blend those 2 sections together so that you lay out the framework within which the instruction is going to happen. Who's the instruction for? Where is it happening? What standards are being used? What's the instructional philosophy of the classroom or the school or the district? And then the final thing will be to establish a couple of SMART goals. How many depends on your topic. Probably, I would say between 1 and 3. If you've got more than 3 SMART goals going, then that probably means your instructional design project is a little big for this class, at least. So I would say somewhere between 1 and 3 was probably a good aim in terms of a number of SMART goals for what we're looking to do. And those goals, again, come out of all of the analysis piece. And you should, honestly, if you do the analysis carefully, the goal should almost write itself, because you've kind of addressed all of the things. You know what the problem is. That gives you the specificness. You know what kind of time frame you're working with. So you've got that. The relevance hopefully comes because you've analyzed your students and you know who they are and you know what they've learned and you know what they want to learn and how they want to learn it, and so on. So, all right. So any questions at this point about the SMART goal format? I know
Yes,
that's. Oh,
I have
go.
a question.
Yeah.
Okay, I understand the SMART goal format. Okay, now is that going to go within the ID project?
Yes.
Or, okay,
Yes.
so
So
uh, go
let
ahead.
me. Yeah. Go ahead.
Um, so in other words, I have an ID project, right? And within that ID project, I'm going to lay out what it is. And then at the end, I'm going to come up with 1 to 3 SMART goals to achieve that project.
Yes. Yep.
Okay. So it's going to be one particular writing, not 2.
One particular.
A presentation.
Yeah. I mean you're developing one instructional design plan.
Okay.
That plan might be taught over 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 class meetings.
Okay.
Um, and within those 3 or 4 or 5 class meetings, you may be addressing a couple of goals along the way.
Okay.
So, but it's all part of one instructional design. So what I pulled up here, like this is the sample document that I put in last week, just to give an idea of what this phase 1 might look like. For this one, I decided to keep all 4 subtopics separate with headers. So I started off with a needs analysis, and in this case, it had to do with the students on an assessment were not showing that they understood music literacy, music terms. So that was the problem that I addressed or identified. Um, and then went on to a context analysis. So I talked about what standards and so on, and how they apply. And then I did an audience analysis, which just sort of lays out who the students are that are in the music program, what their backgrounds are, what their prior experiences are. And then the final piece of it was that out of all that information, I identified 2 goals that were going to be the focus of this plan. And in this case, one of them is that they will be able to achieve a certain level on a post assessment. So that's a measurable thing. They will be asked a series of terms or whatever. And because it's a performing ensemble, the second goal had to do with them being able to use those terms in a performance to actually demonstrate that they know what the terms mean and can actually perform them on their instruments. So then the plan that I'm going to develop will cover how to get the students to reach those two goals. So if that's helpful just in terms of a model.
Okay.
Does that help?
Yes, it did.
Okay. All right. Yeah, and I did put the, the sample document. In the past I've been hesitant about putting sort of samples of assignments like this, because I also don't want you to think that yours has to follow this format, that it has to be broken into the 4 sections. You may find that you want to format this information differently. You might want to combine elements together. You might want to combine some of the context analysis and the audience analysis. So I want you to feel free to format the document in the way that makes the most sense to you and is the clearest. But in this case, also because it's our first phase, kind of give you at least an idea of what one version of this phase 1 might look like, so that you just kind of have that as a reference point. But then within that, certainly feel free, if your particular subject or the way it divides up or the information you've gathered organizes itself better in a different way, then by all means feel free to excuse me, feel free to do so. So anyway, so that document is actually in week 3 from last week. Any other questions? All right. I was going to maybe do an activity tonight where we were going to build a sample scenario and try to develop a SMART goal after that. But again, looking through the forum, it seems like a lot of you already have a pretty good understanding of SMART goals. And hopefully with the information we just went through and with the link here, anything that you need to get caught up with, if this is not a framework you're familiar with, that you can kind of fill yourself in that way. Or as always, feel free to reach out to me too if you have additional questions about the SMART goal format. So I can actually wrap up this evening pretty quickly, because there's not really any new assignment per se, because you started the assignment last week, starting to work on the phase 1 document. So the plan this week is to really just focus on trying to wrap up that phase 1. So in terms of topics, if you're still working on trying to narrow down a topic, please reach out to me if there's anything I can do to help, so that you can get that narrowed down. But once you have your topic in hand, then it's about returning back to that, the phase 1 assignment. Now that we've gone through all 4 parts, you can now effectively complete the assignment. I asked you to hold off last week on the goal setting piece and the audience analysis piece, because I knew we were going to talk about that this week. So just continue to work on the document. In terms of some of the specifics that are in the assignment page, you can type up the document in whatever word processor you like to use. I know most people use Word, but some people use Google Docs. But I would ask that what you submit to the assignment is in PDF format. And any word processor will let you export a file as a PDF. So in Word, you go to File, you go to Save As, and then you select PDF as the file format. Google Docs, if you download a Google Doc, it automatically, I think, downloads it as a PDF. So just get the file into that format once you're done, and then that you would upload to the assignment page that's in week 3. It's the last thing here, the assignment upload. And when you select that, it's going to give you the option to browse local files. You'll attach the file, the PDF that you've written, hit submit, and that's really all you've got to do. These are being run through, and this has just become kind of standard practice with the university on Blackboard. They will be running through the what do they call it? The Safe Assign, which is just a thing that automatically scans documents and looks for issues in terms of plagiarism and stuff like that. I can't imagine there's really going to be much of that in this, because you're writing your own plan. It's, but just so you know what all of that institution release statement is about, that's just about the Safe Assign service. So just attach the file and submit it. And that's really all you need to do. You can add comments if there's something you want to let me know about the file or whatever. You can add a comment to your submission. And the only other thing to remember, I meant to mention this too, is with each of the phases, the final section of the phase should be a reflection piece. And this is not going to be part of your final instructional design. This is just a way for me to kind of check in on how it went, what went well, what did you struggle with, those sorts of things. So once you get done with the actual instructional design, just or the phase 1, just add one more section at the end that says reflection, and just give me, a paragraph or 2 at most, just kind of about how was your experience with the phase, what did you get out of it, what could you have used more help with, anything along those lines, so that I can also then, as I'm looking at your work, also kind of check in on just how the work went. So add that as the final little piece. Yeah, and then here's everything I just went over in terms of the PDF format, et cetera, and so on. So that's really the only assignment this week, is just working on trying to complete phase 1 and get that submitted. There's no other readings, there's no other forums. And next week we will kind of start into the next phase, which is planning, where we'll talk about segmentation and um, those types of things, and start to come up with the breakdown of how we're now going to lead the students to the goals that we've set, and so on. But really for this week, I just want to give you the space to focus on phase 1, get it completed, get it turned in. If you need more time than next week, just let me know. I'm very flexible when it comes to due dates. Obviously, I don't want someone to get so far behind that last week of the class they're having to make up 4 phases of the assignment. But I also know that real life is real life. So if you have things that get in the way or whatever, and you just need a couple extra days, just let me know, and that's going to be just fine. But sort of the target would be for a week from tonight. Okay. So that's really what I've got for tonight. Any last questions or concerns before we bid each other adieu?
Professor Mudd, I just wanted to ask you, a few of us have been talking offline about, we sort of realized we're all kind of in the same classes and on the same master's track,
Yep.
So we were talking about putting together a study group, and I just wanted to ask if that was okay with you and if you had any suggestions. There's only been a handful of us that have been talking about, but we seem to be liking that idea, you know. Do you have
Yeah,
any thoughts?
yeah, I have no issues with that. I mean, it's a master's program. We are all professionals. We've got ideas to share, that collaboration. And I'd say especially, as we're trying to get back into more in-person teaching, like the more contact that you can have with other students and so on. Yeah, I'm totally okay with that. Yeah.
Would you suggest we just send kind of like an email out to everybody? And I'm trying to be careful of it. Should we use Teams as a, or
Um, why don't you know what I could do? I'll add, maybe I'll add it into week 4. I'll throw, whoops, that's week 6. We're not there yet. Um, I'll throw something into week 4, maybe just a discussion forum. And then, I can sort of say what it's about, that there's an interest in if people want to get together in some sort of a study group. And then anyone who's interested can post a message onto it with either contact information or what they would be looking to get out of it, and then we can kind of go from there.
does that make sense, Carrie? Do you think that'll work? Okay. Yeah. Because we kind of are, a lot of us are in 517 as well. So,
Ah,
so I don't know if that would affect the strategy of it or not, but I think we're going to be sort of with each other for a long time,
yeah.
So I didn't know if it was smarter to make it as a, like a global study group, or maybe you can think about it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'll throw something in there to get the ball rolling, and then yeah, then kind of what if if the two of you want to take sort of the lead on it and see who has interest in it, and then figure out how you want to meet and when you want to meet. That's Yeah, that's fine.
Great.
But
Thank you very much.
yeah, no, absolutely. I'm not going to tell students no, you can't talk to each other. I want that to happen. I encourage that. So, all right, and actually, I'll take a note right now so that I don't forget. Forum study group. Yeah, and I think the forum is the easiest tool in Blackboard to allow people to post questions or comments or thoughts or ideas or things like that. So I'll set it up that way. All
That
right.
keeps it out of their email and stuff like that, and a little bit, you know.
Yeah, I mean that way people can sort of decide if they want to share their emails, or if there's another email they'd rather use for that, or another way they'd rather be contacted. They can kind of have their own agency over how they want to have that happen. So,
Thank
all
you.
right. Yeah, good. Anything else for the good of the order before we sign off? All right. Well, then we will call it a night. Again, this week, focus on that phase 1. Any questions that come up, please reach out. Like I said, I'm going to try to get feedback in the next couple of days about the topics, just to make sure everybody is really settled on what those are. And next week, same idea. I'll be here, and we'll kind of be moving into the second unit of the course in a way, where we'll start talking about planning and such. So, all right. So that's it for tonight. I'll hang out until everybody's logged off. If anybody has any other questions they would like to stay and ask, please feel free to do so. And if not, I may see you next week, or I may not. So have a great evening.